Marathon has finally been revealed to us, and oh boy, is there a lot to talk about. After taking all the information in over the last couple of days, I wanted to share some of my brutally honest thoughts about the reveal and share some feedback, most importantly to Bungie, but just about the game in general. A lot of these points, a couple of other creators have said stuff on, so it might feel like I'm repeating them, but still, I want to get my thoughts out there. Before we jump in, I want to say that I have got gameplay here from the various trailers, also some footage from Games Radar and IGN, and everything will be linked in the description if you want to go and check out the footage for yourself. So now, let's talk about Marathon. To be honest, right away, my feelings towards Marathon right now are kind of neutral. There's parts of the reveal that I was really hyped about, but also parts that I really wasn't. I'm neither sold on the game, but I'm not put off by what I've seen. So it kind of leaves me in a weird position because being neutral is a little bit of a problem because I wanted to be super hyped for the game after this reveal, and I'm neither hyped nor uninterested. But why? One of the first things that keeps coming up has got to be the overall presentation and delivery of the information for Marathon, the entire Bungie stream. We spent an hour on stream and got a grand total of 20 to 30 minutes worth of gameplay that was shown, but it was more talking directly to the developers, more telling than actually showing what we got to see. We got the Spice trailer, we got the gameplay overview, and then we got creators playing it, but it never really felt like Bungie sold me on what Marathon was as an extraction shooter. It's cool saying we have status effects, different maps, different weapons of gear that you want to chase, but we barely even scratched anything. You need to show it to actually be believing it, because we've been waiting for this game to be revealed for the last 2 to 3 years. I say this because it's so different in contrast to when we get Destiny seasonal streams where they actually showcase a lot of information and they rotate developers in and out to talk about different aspects of the game, but they show that information as well. What we needed from this Marathon reveal was an information overload, especially for this game, because we haven't seen anything of it. If you're turning into the stream as a new player or someone that's potentially interested in the new Bungie shooter that they're making, this doesn't really feel like they put out the stops for that. They didn't really explain things, and it feels like Bungie was torn between telling people what the genre of an extraction shooter was and trying to tell people who already know why they should play. And I just don't think they really nailed either. They've pushed this mantra of trying to capture a new audience, but are they trying to appeal to Destiny players that want to play a new game, Tarkov players or Hunt Showdown players or other extraction shooter fans, FPS players? There wasn't a real focus on the audience rather than just talking about the developers themselves. I would have wanted to see more. And I know there was a bunch of creators that released gameplay and interviews, new details, and so much more that was after the presentation, but that is supplementary. We should have got most of it from Bungie. For example, they could have done a picture-in-picture screen of the inventory in the game with the weapons, the consumables, the extra equipment, the cores and implants that you can get, going through some of these items to tell us why you want to be getting them, showcasing how attachments affect weapons and the different status effects that consumables can do. Things that could really make you buy into this loot system and understand why we are actually playing the game, and then go through a list of questions from the moderator to showcase what Bungie is doing differently in this genre. A few companies that do this very well, especially GGG, who does the POV streams, they literally overload you with a bunch of information and what they're actually talking about. And I think Bungie could benefit from this, even when they do their normal Vidocs that they showcase whenever they're talking about Destiny. And if I was to analyze the trailers themselves, besides the absolute masterpiece of a cinematic short, I absolutely love that, they need to do things a little differently to Destiny. So many multiplayer games do this weird stuff in their trailers where they'll slowly walk into a building, look at some of the environments, do a cinematic shot, ADS weird, and not really showcase how the game looks and feels. They're trying to make it look as cool as possible, but it's actually doing the opposite. Maybe some players do that, but then when you actually watch gameplay that we saw in the presentation later on, it's like whiplash because it looks so vastly different from the trailer and actually looks better when you see the full gameplay. There was no real hype here in any of the trailers, but Bungie knows how to do this. They know how to blow people away with their trailers. Just thinking about my reaction that I had back to the final shape when it was revealed last year, it was staggering. Sure, there is some context to that reaction, but in this specific instance, having something to be hyped about when it comes to Marathon, it needed to be. But what about what was shown? From all of the gameplay that I've seen for Marathon, it feels very familiar in a good way. It's a combination of like Apex, Halo, Destiny, a couple of other shooters, and it has this faster pace than I've seen with most other extraction shooters. Of course, you can edit things and make it seem a different way to actual gameplay, but even when we were watching the creators play, the moment-to-moment gameplay and the gunplay looks pretty on point for what Bungie can create. Obviously, everything that I'm saying can be the look test. There's no real like feeling, because I won't truly get a feeling for the game until I actually have my hands on it. That's the biggest thing here. I'm seeing that sentiment played out a lot across creators and communities. Like, I want to get my hands on it to see how it feels for myself. But even with the gameplay, there are questions that can't be answered just yet. How does the AI feel? How does the looting and gear system feel? How do team fights feel? What's the balance between the classes in the game? These questions are quite difficult to answer because, you know, we need to get our hands on it. But I think there is a good extraction shooter here, especially with Bungie's gunplay and from what we have seen. But the main statement, question, discussion, or point that I keep seeing and hearing over and over is, what is the game's hook? What separates this from the rest of the pack? It needs a thing at the moment for me that really pulls you in. It needs an X factor. It needs that special sauce. It needs that thing that really sets it apart. Not just being an extraction shooter on console, not just being a Bungie extraction shooter. It needs something in the gameplay or a system in the game that is really separating it. Because if you look at the facts of it all, what is Bungie really doing differently to other extraction shooters? It has AI, it has weapons and gear, it has PvPvE. I 100% feel like Bungie needs to kind of nail that in their next reveal of the game. Does Bungie think that the runners, the aesthetic, are the separating factors? I'm not really sure. Being on consoles is certainly a big draw, as not many extraction shooters in the AAA space are especially on console, but I feel like that's not really enough. As I was going through all of the gameplay footage and seeing what other creators are kind of saying about the game, one point that kind of came up from Shroud, which was really interesting, which was to do with friction. Friction in this genre would be adding things that intentionally make things more difficult for the player, but it also gives the player more agency to discover things and help them progress and enhance the experience for themselves. The removal of friction in Marathon's case would be adding in the values of items and weapons instead of having to discover it yourself like you do in many other games in the genre. It varies from game to game, and maybe Bungie's approach here is to remove some of that friction to make the genre easy to engage with, but in the process, it could kind of sacrifice the reason why many people play this genre in the first place. When you get a new item, what's it going to be worth? Like, how are you going to set up your class? And just going into that environment is kind of those friction points, and maybe Bungie is trying to reduce that part of Marathon and make it like a good jumping on point for the genre. And the way I see it, it looks very much like an extraction shooter light, which is very much like what Destiny gets called, being an MMO light at times. Another common misconception is that it's being called like part hero shooter because of the runners in the game. And the problem you have, for me, with these set classes is it kind of removes player identity towards growing out a character and putting in the progression. Sure, you'll most likely be able to customize each class's appearance, but I feel like many of the abilities that we have on those characters could have been made into gear or for the core and implant system that is going to be like affecting build crafting in the game. And a really cool infographic by Court Projects is going to be on screen right now, seeing the difference between all of the runners' abilities. Also, go and check them out in the description and go support them. They make some really cool infographics. If we were to take all of the abilities and traits that they have and turn them into gear, imagine Void's active camo that we got to see with the movement of Glitch. It could have made some extremely interesting builds, like Blackbird being a scout and then having Locust's shield could have opened up a world of possibilities for one person and really kind of cracked it wide open. Then having the customization to create our own player character would have been great, and to play into the wider narrative of the world feeling unique to your runner. Sadly, I think a lot of this is to do with balance and Bungie wanting to focus more on squad play. It kind of breaks those goals if you do that. I am not necessarily that fussed about not having a player character, but it does feel like it's a massive gripe for quite a few other players, and I think I would have preferred it as well, the same as others. But this is once again another point that if you get into the game and you see how the different classes feel, then maybe I will change my tune on this. And I do want to say at this point in the video, it does feel like I'm being very negative in terms of my criticisms. So let's talk about some of the things that I'm actually a little bit hyped about. And it's mainly aesthetic. It's very modular, it's very clean, and the color palette is something that I vibe with quite a lot. Sure, to some it can feel rather basic and uninspiring, but I've literally spent so much time looking at concept art and looking over certain shots in the game. The vibe hasn't really changed for me. That's something that I'm like 10 out of 10 hyped for. It's 100% in the realm of things that I enjoy, especially being sci-fi, and I've had the concept art to look at. I've also had the soundtrack playing on repeat, which is absolutely fantastic. I wish it was on Spotify so I could listen to it, not on YouTube. The art direction of the game is so good, and it is so different to any other Bungie game that I've already seen. And honestly, a change of pace to the more dark and gritty nature of some of the other extraction shooters that I've seen in the genre. It's the same feeling I got from the initial reveal back in 2013, I think it was, for Destiny. Good art direction can go a long way, and Bungie seems to be keeping that through line. I am also very interested in the wider narrative of Marathon and what the game is going to be doing in terms of pushing its story. I haven't played the original Marathon games apart from looking at a bunch of YouTube videos to kind of get a grasp of a little bit of the lore. The only worrying thing is that the framework for the story is like being built still, and they're going to be adding things as they go. And I think that it's weird because it feels like the story, especially in the game, is going to be told differently to how we receive it in a game like Destiny. It's going to be found in the world and then discussed outside the game after those things are found. So I don't really know how that's going to work in terms of seasonal stories, finding secrets in different maps and such. It's once again one of those things where we're like, we have to wait and see. And what we have right now is an alpha, and then we'll have to really see what it's like when the full launch happens. I also like the fact that Bungie has taken the time to include creators as part of the process, listening to the community and getting people in early with an alpha. I do, however, think when the alpha finishes and the NDAs are kind of up there, I think we need to have a beta or an announcement of a beta date to get some more people hyped and to get people in and have a taste to change the narrative surrounding the game, both positive and negative. Because at the moment, the general sentiment about the game has kind of culminated in one sentence, one quote, which is, I'm not into the genre, but I'll give it a go. Which is okay, I guess, but I think it should be swaying to, this is hype and I want to check this out. Negative sentiment is fair if the criticism is fair, but some of the things that I'm seeing around the game at the moment are just rather wild, and I thought I'd talk about it here as well. Some of the negativity has come from people who just want to hate whatever new game is the thing, which seems to be a case across the board with every game at the moment online. It's just, let's jump on the new game and just hate it because that's the whole point, and they're never really going to actually play the game anyway, so they're just kind of stupid in my opinion. Then it kind of comes into the discussion of the Destiny community, and there's been a bit of a negative sentiment from the Destiny community or certain areas of it. I'm not going to paint everyone with a bland brush there. There are many players that aren't happy with Marathon. They'll never be happy because they feel like this is the game that's taken away Bungie's ability to make Destiny even better or make a Destiny 3. And then you have some players that don't like PvP or extraction shooters that are trying to put things from Destiny into Marathon when it won't really fit the genre. It does come across as a little bit of desperation, a little bit of jealousy at times, which is completely understandable, but I find it quite hilarious that a couple of days after the reveal, Bungie drops the name of the next expansion and the date that the next year of Destiny will be revealed, which is May 6th. So all of that hate towards Marathon isn't as wanted because they're bringing out things for both games. The last discussion point I really want to nail down is the price point of the game, and from what we know right now, is it actually going to be enough content in the game to warrant that price point? It has been confirmed that the game is going to be a premium title. It's not going to be free to play as it stands, but with enough feedback, definitely that could change. It's all up to Bungie at this point. But the pros and cons are quite clear when it comes to Marathon being a boxed price, and also when it comes to free to play. Free to play allows for obviously increased population because more players are going to get access to the game. But then you have the risk of more cheaters entering into the game because banning an account doesn't really matter. We don't know the full details, but if this game doesn't have kernel level anti-cheat, then cheaters will find a way around the system because they always do. I'm not a fan of the company having root access in a kernel level anti-cheat in my PC, but if it's the cost of safety to the game, then I don't think I have too much of a problem. I don't necessarily want that, but if it fixes cheaters, then it fixes cheaters. I also think free-to-play leans heavily towards the push of microtransactions, which may be the same in the paid version, but the free-to-play opens up the floodgates to charge whatever Bungie really wants for cosmetics. And yeah, it's just the kind of a bed that we're in at the moment in the industry when it comes to microtransactions. But I also think free-to-play has a tendency to give developers a free pass to not bring out as much content or produce subpar content because the game is free, which varies from game to game. I think having a premium price gives a bit of responsibility on the devs to update the game and be honest with the price that they've paid and give us the content that we deserve. So I think free to play kind of muddles that a little bit, but having a paid game gives you an initial boost that Bungie will look for to reap back the development costs on the game, especially if it's roughly like $40, which I've seen a few games land at, especially Helldivers 2. I think that might be where we land with Marathon. Having a pay game also allows you to paywall cheaters, which is great. Obviously, we've already just talked about that. And being a paid game does reduce the potential population of the game, which in Marathon's case, it may already have a smaller player base, so it might be a little bit of a downside being paid. But the pros and cons are there for both. I can see it being free to play. I can also see it being a premium price. The real question is, will it be enough? 3 maps, 6 runners, a battle pass, seasonal stories, balance updates, and so on. Is this enough for a $40 box product? I think yes, if we see more from Bungie. A lot of titles come out in early access for that price, so yeah, I think that's kind of okay, but we need to see more than surface level at the moment. Will it be enough content to last hungry players if it does land? I can't really say. It's the same as a lot of this video. It's too early to judge everything based on what we've seen so far until we can get our hands on it. I want Bungie to succeed with this game. I don't want any game to fail. I'm interested to see what Marathon becomes. I'm interested to see how the game evolves. I love the ARG. I love the cinematic shorts. I love some of the gameplay of what I've seen, the art style. But I haven't seen enough or played enough to truly sway me from being neutral at the moment and to see what Bungie's trying to achieve with Marathon. A good extraction shooter, maybe, but a special one, we will have to wait and see. Thank you very much for watching this video. This is just my brutal thoughts on Marathon. If you have your own, let me know down in the comment section. Try to keep it fair and balanced in your criticisms if you do so. Like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me. And as always, it's been Jimbo. I'll see you guys next time.